The 1980s were clearly the worst years of my life. I remember going to a town meeting. My representative from Congress at that time was a man by the name of Matt McHugh. Ronald Reagan was president, and Matt was telling me after the meeting that he was very surprised at the turnout. Uh, it's kind of a strange thing because Ronald Reagan's general message was that government is the problem. And a lot of young people at that time bought into that, thinking that he was talking about things like, well, we're going to let you have sex and smoke naturally occurring substances because we want to get big government off your back. Well, what he was actually talking about was getting big government off the backs of businesses. Pretty much what we're suffering from now. But aside from that, these people that came to these meetings appeared to have these great expectations that somehow, for some reason, the government was going to actually do something for them. There's a video company, Mystic Fire Video. They had a series of, well, when I bought them, they were videotapes. I suppose they have them on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever the latest technology is. And one of them was this piece regarding Allen Ginsberg and William S. Burroughs. They had some institute that was named after the Jack Kerouac on the road in Colorado. And there was a segment in there where Timothy Leary was speaking before this audience, and he was criticizing Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford. And what he was saying was pretty much what a lot of people are saying now. These people in the government aren't going to do anything for you. Jimmy Carter isn't going to do anything for you. Gerald Ford isn't going to do anything for you. And of course, this is a form of blasphemy if you're a member of the Democrats or the Republicans, because it's like, these are my guys. These guys are going to do something for me. I believe in it. It's like religion. This was this idea I'm trying to get at was reflected in something that Jim Hightower wrote on the 14th of December, 2011. I can't remember. I think it's this. It's something I get in the email, National Memo, I think it is. And he was essentially saying the same thing, that people at one time had this expectation the government was going to do something for them. And now all of a sudden it's like when you go to, when if you're even allowed any sort of access at all to government, they're essentially saying, oh, no, 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 no. No, there was never any sort of intention like that, that the government was, all that we do, we print money for businesses so that business could do business. And we have the war machine. We go and invade a country where people don't want our guys to do business, and we overthrow them, and everybody does the national anthem, and then our guys go in there and do business. But as far as anything else goes, oh, didn't you ever hear the expression, what do you do for a living? When I hear something like that, I think, how utterly degrading could one possibly be? What do you do for a living? In other words, you can't just eat. You can't just have a place to sleep. You have to do something for it. And this idea is echoed now by the people that are running for the presidency under the Republican Party banner. And those under the Democratic banner are saying jobs, jobs, jobs. Well, it must have occurred to you at some time. Where did all of this arise? Where did it come from? Where did it start? What caused it? And I think the only answer to that is what caused it was that survival for a period of time became simpler. The manufacturing age. People became disconnected from the earth. It was like, well, the woman's at home, she's doing the Betty Crocker thing. The guy's hustling down the street, going to lunch. You know, he's got a half hour for lunch, but the factory was built, and then the hamburger joint was built, and, you know, the bar rooms and the churches and whatever. We only have a half hour for lunch, but, you know, we just gobble down a few hamburgers, swallow them whole, and we're all set to go back to work again. Of course, you know, there's always a wimpy standing on the corner, and we give him a hamburger, and he always gladly pays us back on Tuesday. Somewhere along the line, that became more difficult. So manufacturing, in one regard, answered the difficulty of survival question. And this was something that was provided for by the private sector. So it's a sort of post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy. Because the private sector did this, the private sector is intended to do this. And this is the way that it was always intended. And now you have a political party that's trying to duplicate that, even though it's long since obsolete. I was watching Jag and Johnny Boner making up excuses for why the Republicans won't allow Obama to have this what they refer to as tax cut for the middle class. And I thought to myself, you know, if I was a little kid, I'm 56 years old now, so I'm talking like, you know, 6, 8 years old, so 50 years ago, I could remember my relatives still burnt coal for heat. I could remember the coal truck coming to the house, the front house, delivering coal for heat. And when I was thinking about this pipeline deal, I'm thinking to myself, 50 years ago, what he was saying 50 years ago would have been absolutely pertinent. But what he's saying now isn't. Because back in the time where Timothy Leary was addressing this audience, previous to that time, one of his messages was, we're going to tear down the American empire. I used to use it on my radio show. It's steel and television, and I can't remember what the whole shtick was. But previous to that time, I used to get the Whole Earth catalog, and they had all sorts of nifty, what they call now green types of technology. They had this device that you could you could hook up to an outhouse, and it would turn your shit and piss into water that you could drink. I don't know if I would drink it, but, you know, I could use it to water my garden and whatnot. Now, these things, the people were talking about these things back in the 60s. And if you seriously advocated anything like this to anybody that was a member of the Democratic Republican single party monolith, you would be brandished as a communist and probably burnt on the cross on some local hillside. They didn't want to hear anything about it. But then these convulsions occurred, and you had um, the Watergate problems with Richard Nixon. And a lot of people put a lot of faith into George McGovern. And George McGovern was a decent man. I don't know how or how different things would be if he had been elected president at that time. But it sort of overlapped with the civil rights acts. Lyndon Johnson saying, and this is all like indelibly burned into our brains, there goes the South, when he signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So all of these aspects of survival, the modern economy, the manufacturing, the military-industrial complex, fairness, the ability of people to live something that seemed like a normal existence, and then losing faith in the government, that the government really did not appear to have any real interest in doing anything for people. It was all about business. So I think the crux of that whole thing, or where all of these cascading projections of individual wills sort of met together, formed some sort of explosion into a new thing, was when Richard Nixon decided, Lyndon Johnson's correct. All of the Democrats, the heart, soul, and flesh of the Democratic Party being slavery and white supremacy, are going to need a new tent to congregate under. And we're going to give them that big tent. And, of course, they came up with what's known as the Southern Strategy. The George Wallace Democrats in coalition with what remained of the Republican Party. And that is essentially what we have today. Except one of the things that has happened is that as a microcosm of what I've just explained, the South has evolved into something else. So that these conservatives from the southern states don't really represent, as I see it, the people that live in the southern states. I could give you some examples of this, but I'm running out of time here. I'll continue it on my next allotment.